My name is Betsy Plum, and I'm very happy to be in hot, warm DC from New York City, which isn't quite so sticky yet. And I'm very excited about this panel. We work very closely with consulates up in New York City at the New York Immigration Coalition. And it's exciting to really talk about the role that consulates and embassies and their networks can play in outreach and education around immigration programs in generally, but particularly DACA and DAPA, and how we can really maximize that impact. I would love to preface it with the fact, I think we heard a little bit about the community navigators in Matthew's presentation, but in sort of the whole rollout of DACA and DAPA and the conversations around community outreach and community education, the discourse is really centered around non-traditional partnerships. And how can we dig deep in communities? How can we find the networks that people already trust and go to? And how can we leverage those networks? And the whole entire time, I'm always thinking consulates, consulates, consulates. And I think consulates are the prime example of that kind of network that can reach communities in a way that very few other organizations and networks can. In many cases, you are that community. Individuals trust their consulates in ways, again, that other organizations can't really secure that same kind of trust. You are their government. And a really interesting way that consulates can interact is we've talked about consular documents, so foreign passports, matriculas, consular ID cards, all of that. People come for those documents. Now they come for those documents because they need them for these applications. But people also come for these documents just because they need them to live their life in the United States. Many who are undocumented, and that's the only type of document that they can get. So in that population, in many cases, you're capturing individuals that would never affirmatively go to a lawyer or a legal service provider, or maybe even a notario. They wouldn't go to anyone. They would never know about these programs. So you have a real opportunity to educate people that wouldn't otherwise be educated. And of course, as we've talked about a lot, you, with the trust that you have, you can push people towards these programs. You can also push them towards the right kind of people to help them with these programs. So immigration fraud, everything from educating individuals that notarios in Spanish-speaking countries are different than notarios here. And I know there is the equivalent of the notario in many other cultures and communities, so really creating that, sending people to the right places, sending people to the right lawyers, low-cost options, all of that. So I have quite the panel to the left of me, and I'd love to turn it over to everyone to introduce themselves. By the way of my own introduction, I said we work a lot with the consulates. Basically, to sort of sum that up, what we've done for the last 4 years, we've worked with about 10 consulates in New York City. We started with Mexico and their phenomenal network. We now work with, and let's see if I can do all of these, El Salvador, Guatemala, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Costa Rica, Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominican Republic, and I know I'm forgetting Costa Rica, if I didn't already say that. And we're always looking to expand it, if you didn't hear your country. And we bring services. We go out with the consulates. We go out to where communities are. We bring full legal services. We bring social services. The consulates that are doing the documentation, they can do that there. And as of last weekend, we've helped over 27,000 individuals through this. And I really fully credit that to the consulates and your ability to bring out your nationals and your ability to provide them with great services. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Julian first, and I was thinking it'd be really great to not only introduce ourselves, but to explain a little bit about the networks that each consulate and embassy sort of runs throughout the country. And that's because the point that I'd love to leave this panel with today is that the fact consulates come in so many different shapes, sizes, and capacities, and whether you have huge capacity or you have virtually no capacity, which really is the reality in some places, there is still a role to play. So, Julian?
Just introduction or
why don't we do introductions, and then we'll dive into the other things.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I'm Julian Escutia. I head the Consular Coordination and Hispanic Affairs section at the Embassy of Mexico. As Alejandro mentioned before, we have the largest consular network of one country in another country. We are very proud of that, but we know that that's not enough, and that's why we are always looking for new partners and obviously working with our colleagues from Latin America and beyond. So I have been here in Washington, D.C. for over 4 years, and I'm really happy to be here and thankful to the organizers for the invitation.
Good afternoon, my name is Arlene Magno and I'm from the Philippine Embassy, the consular section of the Philippine Embassy to be exact. The DACA program has become my personal baby, if I may say so. Our network is not as big as the Mexican Embassy. We only have 7 missions. The embassy, of course, in DC plus 6 more. But I'm not ashamed to say that many of the things that we've been doing, I've taken after the Mexican Embassy as a model.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Kenny Lopez. I'm the Consul General of El Salvador. Well, we have a lot of Salvadorian citizens, especially in DMV, and Washington, Maryland, and Virginia, but we have 17 offices around United States. We already opened a new office in McAllen, Texas, for the Rio Grande, because we saw the needs that we have in all this country about our human rights. And we are working very hard because we know we have almost 2 million Salvadorian citizens in 2012 with our last census. So we know that we have more Salvadorians community. That's why we are looking for agreements. We are looking for other tools that can help us to bring the right information and the right tools to our community to get in this culture. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Julieta Garibay. I'm not with a consulate, I'm actually with United We Dream, which is the first and largest immigrant youth-led network in the nation. We have 53 affiliates in 26 states, and we are very grateful for the embassies and the consulates, because a lot of our work that we do with DACA has been really through them because of what was already mentioned and how there is already this trust with the embassies, where people can just go in and their friends are ready, so it's easy to go in there and get that information. And I'll share a little bit of how we're working and how we hope to work with other embassies to make DACA and hopefully DAPA successful.
Great. So I think I can probably, to eliminate all of the passing back and forth, be loud. So I think what might be best is if we look at DACA, which, as Julian, when we had our planning call, really pointed out well, we still have a lot of homework to do on DACA. We have a lot of work to do on DACA 1, and we have, with recent events, with the injunction and everything going on with DACA and DAPA, fortunately we have some time to continue to do that work, and more than enough to keep us busy. So sort of looking back at DAPA, what each of our networks has done, and in Julieta's case, what United We Dream has sort of done to provide partnership to the consulates around DACA. And I think we all have best practices. We all have some challenges that we can share. And I think in many cases we learn far more from the things that challenge us. I think Arlene really pointed out, and I would love if you could talk about some of the challenges that we've faced. So sort of looking back on DACA, and then after that diving into what we're doing to continue to work on DACA 1, as some people call it, and beginning to prepare for DACA 2 and DAPA. So I guess I have some notes that it would be great if we could sort of tease out the best practices sort of from the Mexican experience, in Arlene's experience, and I think Mark left, but if you look at the data, the Philippines really represent, and I think this is appropriate and true for other countries as well, that there are some populations that you see the demographics, and there should be so many people that should be applying, and then we see enrollment levels that are so low. And so I think that's a real challenge that we've seen, particularly in the case of the Philippine community. And that's something that we need to think about. How do we address the challenges, some of the solutions that we found for them for DAPA? For Penny, I think, and the Salvadoran experience, we have a lot to learn from TPS. Again, we've talked a little bit about TPS. This applies to the Haitian colleagues in the room. But sort of what has the experience been with TPS, a program that in the Salvadoran case has been going on since 2001, for the Hondurans and Nicaraguans since 1998. These are programs that are different than DAPA, but in some ways very similar. It's a program, for those that aren't already familiar, that is discretionary, that, you know, in so much that it does not come through Congress in the way that immigration reform would come. The form for DAPA and DACA is based off the TPS form, and it's a form of relief that needs to be renewed every 18 months. So I think the best practices that we've learned from TPS are really helpful there. And then with Leah, the sort of the experience that you've had in implementing DACA in partnership with the consulates. So.
Okay. And I only have 5 minutes for all of that. No, thanks Betsy, for the introduction and setting the scene. Really good. So we have been engaging with the diaspora in a systematic and way for over 25 years. We started with a program really to promote ties of the communities here with Mexico, basically around culture and sports. And then it evolved into more of an empowerment and integration agenda. And right now we would like to think that our consulates are integration centers in which our nationals come and not only can apply for passports and consular IDs, but also they can get information about education, health, financial literacy programs, and obviously other services like powers of attorney and so on. So, as Betsy said, trust is critical in all of these efforts. It really was difficult for us to build this trust because a lot of our nationals, obviously, they left our country because they didn't have the opportunities that they wanted. So they came here and they found those opportunities, and they are really here and they are not going back. That's why we have changed our approach in our engagement with them, because if you see recent immigration data for Mexico, it's basically a net zero migration. So it's pretty obvious that our nationals are here to stay, and our objective is that they are happy and successful wherever they choose to live. And they want to live here, and we will help them as much as we can. And that is also why we kind of closed our strategy of helping them with the historic decision that was announced last year in San Diego by former Ambassador Medina Mora, by which we are informing our nationals, eligible nationals, to apply or at least to consider being U.S. citizens. So in this way, we really closed the circle of our efforts in terms of integration of our nationals to the U.S. So 25 years, very successful, but we missed something specific for youth. We didn't have programs for youth. We were very good in engaging with their parents in terms of sports and culture and matriculas and opening bank accounts, and in some states getting their driver's licenses, but we didn't have anything for youth. So DACA in 2012 was the perfect resource or program to be relevant for Mexican youth, and Julieta, who is young and Mexican, can really attest to that. So we created a 3-level strategy to service DACA youth, DACA eligible youth. First level of the strategy was to really disseminate information massively. So we use traditional and non-traditional or new technologies and resources. We created an app for smartphones and tablets. We have a toll-free number, a hotline that operates almost 24/7. But we also are using intensively radio and television. Our consuls have a lot of time I would say free time, obviously, because we can't pay it, a lot of time on air, both in radio and TV, and we use it intensively to disseminate information. We obviously also use our consulates and our waiting room areas. We have screens in all of those waiting rooms. We estimate that around 4 million people go through our consular network every year. So it's a very powerful tool. And you may imagine that a lot of companies and organizations want to go to our waiting rooms. So we use that as a first level, really get the word out about DACA, the requirements, and the information that we have at the consulates, and that there are good players like Clinique, like other stakeholders locally that really can help our nationals, and to be aware of notario fraud and all of that. Second level, we organized a lot of DACA drives, DACA application drives, workshops, more for 100, 200, depending on the city, no? Like Kansas City was 50 people, LA was 200 people. And we obviously did this in partnership with United We Dream and other local organizations. I don't want to, we brag about our big consular network because we have a big community here, and we are opening the 51st consulate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, pretty soon. But we can't work without our friends from other countries and with local stakeholders and national organizations. We can't do it. So together we are able to really serve more and more people. So that's how we went about this second level of engagement and strategy to help DACA youth. And the third level is obviously, and let me say something, for the first and second level of the strategy, it's open for everyone. It's not only for Mexicans. Our consulates are open to everyone. Not the passports and matriculas, obviously, but everything, the rest is open to everyone. I was consul for community affairs in Houston, and we saw people from all over the countries coming to our health resource center, Ventanilla de Salud. So that is something important. Many of you already know it, but it's important for me to emphasize it and for you to take it back to your capitals and to your consulates here, that the Mexican consulate is always open to everyone. So the third level of the strategy was individual assistance. So case by case, without creating any expectations and not disseminating this publicly, we were able to provide legal assistance to some individuals, sometimes with an attorney, sometimes with everything. The attorney, the fees, everything. And the numbers are quite high. A lot of people want to take that number from me, but I won't disseminate it because it's not public. We brag about some things, not about everything. But it's quite high, and Julieta can also attest to that. And okay, so finally, I don't want to continue talking. Challenges to really get the attention of people. This litigation, I mean, today I will have to, after this, I will have to run to my office and write press releases and talking points for our consuls because of this litigation. This litigation is taking away a lot of our energy and our attention. There are over, I don't know, the numbers Mark would know it more better than me, but over 500,000 or more individuals out there that are eligible for DACA and haven't applied. So please, if there's a key message that I would like to share with you is, please focus on DACA, DACA, DACA. We prepared for DAPA and DACA Plus or DACA Extended. It didn't happen, but we're opening the consulates. All of our consulates are open now in the evenings and on Saturdays, sometimes on Sundays. And we are getting people prepared for those, for DAPA and for DACA Extended. But still, there's DACA, and we have to take advantage of it because it has proven to be a successful program for them, for their families, for their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me to read from my notes because I think that will ensure that I stay within the time limit that I'm given. So the invitation to speak was extended to us on the strength of our accomplishments in educating and assisting our communities about recent immigration programs of the Obama administration. However, I'll be quick to clarify that it has not translated into any great numerical success. So still, the embassy has worked closely with AIC and Clinic, and we thought that we'd give back by being part of the panel today. We first got involved in the campaign for DACA in late 2013, when our attention was called by studies conducted by recent research and policy centers 1 year after the implementation of DACA that showed that Filipinos were among those who had not actively embraced the breaks offered by DACA. The results of the studies pointed to the fact that despite there being at least about 20,000 DACA eligible Filipino youth, we only had about 16 to 20% of that population applying for DACA. Realizing therefore that there were many more thousands of our youth that would be able to benefit from DACA, the embassy agreed to support the campaign and help spread awareness of DACA to our youth. So we launched our campaign at the embassy in December 2013 with a forum that we organized in conjunction with a DACA law fellow at the National Immigration Law Center and the Executive Director of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, or APALA, both of whom were Filipinos. Since then, we held a second DACA Information Forum in July of last year, followed by a DACA clinic with the help of several advocacy groups, which included United We Dream, the American Immigration Council, and Clinic. Patrick Torrell was among those very crucial in helping this event take place. I understand also that the Philippine Embassy has the distinction of being the first embassy to host a DACA clinic, second only after the Mexican consulates in the US. Don't ask me about the results because they're not encouraging. We have engaged the assistance of the USCIS and made them an integral component of our monthly consular outreach missions in the US Southeast, which is what the embassy in DC covers. For over a year now, they have been joining our consular outreach missions in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, setting up a table, an information table, and addressing questions from our clients and giving away DACA information materials. So this arrangement has mutually benefited both our institutions in terms of meeting our mandate for community outreach. We made a presentation on DACA to our heads of Philippine Foreign Service posts in the US at our annual Consuls General planning session in December 2013, right after we agreed to campaign on DACA. And they were given instructions to bring the campaign to their respective jurisdictions. And we also agreed to designate our assistants to nationals officers as DACA focal persons. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 7 Philippine Foreign Service posts. Aside from our embassy in DC, we have consulates general in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Honolulu, and in Guam. And they have come up with their own agenda in furthering DACA and exploring ways of increasing DACA applications among our youth. More recently, we have partnered with the Branch Banking and Trust Company, or more popularly known as BBNP, which has a fantastic program of working with DACA recipients and the organizations that assist DACA families by providing them with sound financial education while informing them on DACA. On their own, they have conducted quite a few DACA informational fora alongside partnering NGOs. For the Philippine Embassy, we first teamed up with them for a DACA forum they hosted in Virginia Beach at the Tidewater Community College that we conducted that we coincided with our consular outreach in that area. We are replicating these efforts with the BBNP for our latest DACA event and in cooperation with the SEIU this coming June 19. In APALA as well. The forum will be held at the PhilAm Multicultural Center in Oxon Hill, Maryland, and we hope to target our youth from Virginia, DC, and Maryland. So we will discuss at that forum the expanded DACA and DACA, even if it has not taken off yet. The SEIU had approached the embassy earlier this year also to help us to ask for support for their iAmerica campaign and website, which offers helpful informational tool and interactive opportunities for immigrants in the US to learn about expanded DACA and DAPA. So they came up with brochures, which we helped correct the translation for, and these brochures are available at the Philippine Embassy and all our consular posts for dissemination to our consular clients. While we have undertaken all these measures in an attempt to reach out to our communities, and I believe I speak for all our US posts, the results based on the figures provided by the USCIS have not been encouraging. The number of Filipino DACA recipients has not increased significantly over the past couple of years. With only, if we started at 4,000, we have only 6,500 applications since 2012, I understand. So that represents only about 30% of all our DACA eligibles. So it makes us wonder why, or whether we are looking at the right places or talking to the right audience, whether enough people are reading our messages, or if we are even doing enough to begin with. We ask the question why our youth are not coming out. Is it because of fear, real or imagined, maybe lack of trust even in their own embassy? Or is the feeling of shame so ingrained in our culture that it paralyzes us from seizing the opportunities presented by DACA? Maybe it's a case of apathy. Do they lack interest because they have not experienced how it is to cross borders, to be without papers, and therefore they don't feel the great need to be documented? Or maybe because the support group among Filipino communities is strong, so that it helps them get by? Or is it because they are waiting for something more permanent and they do not want a temporary measure such as DACA? So we have these questions and we ask them numerous times, but we don't know how to answer them. Nonetheless, we have resolved our commitment that we made 1.5 years ago to help raise DACA awareness, and now DAPA, as part of our overall Assistance to Nationals program. And we are determined to contribute our efforts to continue educating the Filipino communities in the US with the aim of having one less person out of status, lessening the psychological burden of being out of status, and improve their economic standing in US society. So there's truly a lot more that can be done, and thankfully there are a lot of resources that are made available to us, both by USCIS as well as the advocacy groups present here today. Indeed, even this forum is one such resource, and as soon as I get back, the wheels of action will start churning again. I started my remarks by clarifying that our efforts have not resulted in significant increases in people who have availed themselves of DACA. As I conclude, I also want to clarify that it is not the policy of the Philippine government to encourage immigration of our nationals. In the President's inaugural speech 5 years ago, he said that our goal is to create jobs at home so that there will be no need for Filipino people to leave their country out of necessity and for prolonged periods of time, or when the pressure to emigrate will no longer be as much as it was in the past. But until then, we shall remain supportive of US immigration programs like the DACA and the DAPA, because we want every Filipino to have the chance to be able to chart for himself a future that is not thwarted by fear of impediments, but emboldened by the opportunities that exist for any lawful member of US society. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to be very briefly, and I would like to talk about two special programs that we have in our community, Salvadorian community, and I'm going to start with our general service that we have in our consulate. We have 7 things around the United States, but our goal, first of all, is think our Salvadorian citizens is living in the United States. So they need proof ID, passport, national ID, legal documents from our country, for the Department of Police of El Salvador. They need birth certificate to start any process here in the United States, and we have a special department in El Salvador working on that. Marriage certificate. 2, we are working with the protection of human rights in United States and labor rights, because we know there's a very important topic to our community, because they come to work almost all the day. They have 3 or 4 works, and we know that they need assistance. We are working in legal assistance, not for all the cases that we know, because we don't have enough resource to complete it. We are working with attorney assistance from El Salvador, because sometimes they need to finish a process in El Salvador, or they need to complete some documents from El Salvador to apply to some program here in the United States. But basically that's our main work here. But we have the TPS. The TPS is our temporary protection status that we have in 2001, because we had a big earthquake in our country. And the TPS, the Secretary of the Homeland Security may designate a foreign country for TPS due to conditions into the country that temporarily prevent the country's nationals from returning safely, or in certain cases where the country is unable to handle the return of this national irreparably, may grant TPS to eligible nationals of certain countries or parts of countries who are already in the United States. What our office do? We fill the forms for free. We have legal assistance for some special case that they have. We have special schedules, including weekends. We work the last time 60 days every day, Sundays and Saturdays too. We have a very important media, TV programs, radio. We were working about that they have to complete a process, that they have to do it before the deadline, because we only have 60 days to do. And special assistant in all our consulates, the 17 consulates around the United States, we were open 7 days on the week to complete the process with the TPS, because we want the day renewal his status, because it's only for 18 months. Every 18 months they are going to do it again. During a designated period, individuals who are TPS beneficiaries or who are found preliminarily eligible for TPS upon initial review of their case are not removed from the United States can obtain employment authorization document and may be granted a travel authorization. Once granted TPS, an individual also cannot be detained by DHS on the basis of his or her immigration status in the United States. TPS is a temporary benefit that does not lead to lawful permanent resident status or give any other immigration status. However, registration for TPS does not prevent you from applying for non-immigration status, filing for adjustment status basis on immigration petitions, applying for any other immigration benefit or protections or for which you may be eligible. So I think we have 2,000 Salvadorian citizens right now with the TPS. It's a very benefit to our community, because they can work legally and they can stay in the United States with any problem. But we know that is not the whole solution for our community. So, and we have another program that I would like to talk a little bit about the CAM. It's about the Central American Minors Refugee Parole Program. Provides certain qualified minors in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras a safe, legal, and orderly alternative to the dangerous journey that some of the children are currently undertaking to the United States. The CAM program began accepting applications from qualifying parents in the U.S. for their children on December 1st, 2014. The qualified parent is the US-based parent who may complete the application. Only certain parents described below are eligible to qualified parents and file for their children. Each qualified child must be unmarried under the age of 21 and resident in El Salvador, Guatemala, or Honduras. In certain cases, the parent of the qualified child may also qualify for access if the parent is the spouse of the qualified parent. So we know that it's a very important program to our community, for the community of Guatemala and Honduras, because we have the challenge to outreach our community to use the program, to apply to this program specifically with CAM, because in our office we are looking for some numbers. Why you don't apply? Because in the program, in CAM, they can apply with just have TPS. And that is a big benefit for our community, but we already know that we don't have enough information for the Latin community, for our community to reach this kind of program. So our challenge is how our community can get the programs, the requirements, and get into this benefit. So, and the qualified child in El Salvador, Guatemala, or Honduras must be the child of the qualified parents per the Immigration and Nationality Act, biological, step, or legally adopted. Unmarried under the age of 21, a national of El Salvador, Guatemala, or Honduras, and residing in his or her country of nationality. So what we doing in our office about these programs? We sign a cooperation agreement with USCRIS between our government for legal assistance for the special cases of free assistance. We have a call center to assistance a lot of questions that people maybe they are afraid to go to our consulate or office, maybe they can't take the phone and call for general assistance, and we can start with that. So our office, we have more personnel to give that information, and we are looking for special programs with special campaigns here in the United States and in El Salvador too, because we know that we have to work in both countries at the same time, because we have to have the right information here and in El Salvador too. And it's basically that we are working in our 17 offices in our embassy, and we are trying to get support, to legal support on these special programs. And the main thing here is the outreach, that we are planning to have more outreach to our community, and keeping work with the human rights, because we think if the person can have all the conditions to be here in the United States, maybe they can look for a special program, but when they don't have enough information, it's complicated to our office rights to give new programs and to get it. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to just bring us back to how DACA happened. So it was a campaign run by mainly undocumented immigrant youth, and many maybe here in the room that wanted some type of relief for immigrant youth. But I think what's the most important part is that for 25 years there had been no relief. There had been nothing that was positive for the immigrant community, and so for those 25 years our communities were living in fear. Thankfully we have now a network within United We Dream and many other networks of dreamers that have actually started coming out of the shadows. But for example, when I started, I was not undocumented and unafraid. I was very afraid, very undocumented, but I decided to step up. But that was 10 years ago. I've been blessed to actually find a network, and we started really building what it meant to be through community power. But besides that, people who are not part of the network, people who are not part of the DREAM movement, have really faced the challenge of, okay, so we want DACA, how do we implement it? how do we make sure people who have been living for 25 years in fear actually do come out and apply for a program where they're actually still scared of saying like, well, if I apply, am I going to get turned into USCIS? And I'm submitting my papers there, so that means I am submitting and I'm letting them know where I am and where my family is. And so I think that has been one of the main challenges. We had planned and fought for DACA, but then we hadn't thought as much about the actual implementation because majority of people told us, well, you're never going to win. And so that was kind of like a learned lesson of how do we make sure, yes, we're fighting for something, but then how are we going to be ready for the actual implementation of these programs. And so for United We Dream, that's why we started Own the Dream, where really we're making sure that the community who was affected was applying for these programs, and where they're kind of like the spokespersons who were saying DACA works, it's gonna work, you should apply. But it's really been a challenge, and I think working with the consulate, especially the Mexican consulate, because a lot of our membership is Mexican, including myself, has been a true blessing. Like I said, there is this trust already in the community. They know you can go get your passport, your matricula. So it's been great to be able to go into the consulate with our local affiliates and actually do info sessions on site. That has been one of the biggest benefits, and I think what has really helped not only United We Dream, but I think the entire immigrant movement to really make sure that this actually is a success. I also wanted to share, of course, with DACA, we did a lot of the work together with the consulate, and we hope to do more work with other consulates. I think now the challenge with DACA renewals is that because of the lawsuit and people thinking, well, something's not right, there is a lawsuit that's putting everything, the DAPA program on hold. Some people are starting to doubt, should I apply for even DACA renewals? And so I think it's a challenge for all of us because people are thinking, well, it's working, but should I apply? Is something gonna happen with a new president in 2016? And that's something that we just can't deny or pretend is not happening. In regards to DAPA, although there has been the lawsuit and everything has been put on hold, it's been amazing to work with the consulate to really get the word out there of this is what the program is, this is who could be potentially eligible. So we've been doing, of course, also educational sessions in the waiting rooms of the consulates, as well as just making sure people actually get their passports or matricula consular that many of them need. Because like I said, 25 years of being under the shadows or on the shadows, many people don't even have a passport. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges many of us have faced. And then in regards to the enforcement, y'all were talking about PEP and what it means and priorities. So United We Dream, like Alejandro mentioned from the Embajada, we set up a hotline, a national hotline where people can actually call in and say, okay, I think my mother or father or someone that I know might be eligible for DAPA or DACA. Can you help them? And then they're in deportation proceedings. And so through this hotline, we've been able to catch some of these families that might be likely going into deportation, but we've been able to fight back those deportations. We've also been able to really try to figure out what's happening. So there is the DACA was announced, there was a lawsuit, everything was put on hold. And then what we're seeing on the ground is a lot of checkpoints and raids in very rural areas in the US, North Carolina, Georgia, and so Florida. And so what we've been trying to figure out and try to make sure that the administration is actually abiding to what one of the last persons in the panel was sharing about the illness clause. How do we make sure people who, yeah, they might be a priority, but they have all these equities like a family in the US, like they've been living in the US for many years or for decades. How do we make sure those cases don't just get deported, usually in a heartbeat, 48 hours from what we started hearing? How do we make sure we're fighting those cases back? And so the Embajada has been amazing because they're actually been promoting our hotline, which has been really great, and where we've been able to actually catch some of those cases that are potentially eligible for DAPA, DACA, or our priorities, but should be able to stay here because they lived here for so many years. And so lastly, I just wanted to kind of do a challenge for all of us in the room. Of course, June 15th, which is our anniversary of DACA, is coming up. I think from our perspective is what really need to remind the community that we want DACA, we want DAPA. DACA has been a great success for many of our youth. Many of them are actually, if I may, Jose and David, I know both of them are DACA mentored, and they have been a success. And I know I'm going first like case basis, but David, for example, he runs our Own a Dream program with United We Dream. Thanks to DACA, he's doing the work, he's showing how successful it is. And I feel like part of our work as embassies, as allies, as United We Dream is to really highlight those stories and say, you know what, DACA has worked and we need to make sure that DACA is gonna work. We need to get out those stories so that people like that are maybe not Mexicans and not out of the shadows, undocumented or not afraid, actually get to hear this program worked. You get a work permit and you're able to work for 2 years and you get to renew it. Yeah, it's not the permanent solution, it's not the best solution that we hope for, but we are committed to continue to fight. And so I think that's the main message that we really need to get out there so that people that are afraid still are able to say, okay, maybe I can do that. Someone else that was part of my neighborhood did it and they got DACA now, and I should be able to apply as well. So yeah, those are some of my learnings and some of the challenges we've seen.
Thank you. So I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I think there are so many different areas that you could sort of start to think about doing this work from. Some of the elements that I picked up that I think are important to know is first the injunction. Julian saying he has to give back and write a press release, get, talking points out to the network. The injunction, the onus of that, the hard work on that is on everyone, but particularly on those players in the community. It's question after question after question, and it's a really complicated topic that I think a lot of immigration lawyers sometimes have trouble explaining. So being able to be well educated on that and being able to continue to inspire faith in these programs and to not be completely discouraged. I was talking to Patrick earlier and I said, it's sort of like the community's on a little bit of a yo-yo. And so I think this point on empowering people to tell their stories, especially just when you're having a one-on-one conversation with them, they come into your consulate, they come to your mobile unit, is really helpful in sort of inspiring more encouragement that trickles down into the whole family. Another piece I think, as we've talked about, is continuing to work on DACA 1, that there's a lot of work that we can be doing. There's a lot of work on these enforcement priorities. One thing that Julian had said again on our planning call was that even if we didn't have DACA and DAPA, we can still stop deportations. And that's a really important point, to really think about the power of that change and make sure that people are really taking advantage of them. And then two other little tiny things before I'll break into, please interrupt me if there's anything that you'd like to say too, because these are all your points that I'm stealing. The rapid response networks that are flexible. Kenny spoke a little bit about everything going on with the Central American children. I think when we create these partnerships, when we're working with networks like United We Dream, I know, the coalition where I work for in New York is part of the National Partnership for New Americans that is all different kinds of coalitions throughout the country. You don't have to be in a city like New York City or Washington or Houston or places with big immigration populations to still have grassroots or grass tops groups that can help you and that you can partner with to sort of provide that capacity to your consular network. And those partnerships are flexible. And so it was DACA in 2012, and now it's DACA and DAPA. But we saw this past summer, when there was a huge influx of child refugees, these same networks, these same partnerships were able to come together and offer clinics for these children and offer sort of some of the advocacy tools. And so I think that's starting to really build a powerful movement and a powerful partnership between consulates and community organizations, faith organizations, local on-the-ground stakeholders, so that someday, should we, God willing, see comprehensive immigration reform, we have a really strong on-the-ground foundation. And the last little piece I'll say is, and I think, again, this is something that the consulates do wonderfully, and you touched on it a little bit with talking about the health outlets and the health resources, the financial resources, but DACA and DAPA are just the first step, I think. The ability for consular networks to connect their nationals to adult education opportunities, to health access. In New York State, it's different in every state I know, but if you are a DACA recipient and when you will become a DAPA recipient, you can get Medicaid. So that's a big deal to be able to connect someone to health options, to be able to educate them on that. And that's something we've really seen the consulates do, and workforce programs. I think this will be a big thing with DACA. We talk about getting people to come out and do these programs, but in the DAPA case, if you're already working, what is this, in some people, and this has been said to me time and time again, what's the point of what's the point of putting, sending this application into USCIS? Potentially, though we would hope this wouldn't be the case, but it is again difficult to sometimes explain that, putting myself at risk if I already have a job. And so being able to connect people to the resources that allow them to get a better job once they have that work permit is something that consulates do phenomenally, but also it's something that we can be doing today while we wait for these programs to open up. So I don't know if anyone wants to chime in with a last little piece on that. No? Okay.
I have just a pragmatic suggestion to make to consular officials, and Alejandro forgot to say this, but whenever you are approaching ICE officers or CBP officers, agents, right now, don't mention DACA plus or DACA. Don't mention it. Just have in your hand the priority enforcement memo and stick to that. And through that, you will stop deportations. Don't mention DACA.
Why do you say that?
Because their guidelines say that those programs are suspended.
Yeah.
And they don't like it. I mean, agents on the ground in Iowa, in Nashville, Tennessee, they don't like these programs that stop deportations. But if you go with them and say, your boss says that this person can't be deported, and I have an attorney outside for him to represent him. So what are we going to do? So just a suggestion, and it has worked. Not every time, but it works.
That's a good suggestion. So I think the last little point, and then we should open up, we have enough time for some questions. I think, again, going back to, and we've heard a little bit about this, consular networks come in many stages, I just can't say shapes and sizes. Sizes, I combined the two words. They come in many shapes and sizes, and so I think there's different ways, and again, this really came out in sort of talking to everyone, that there are so many different ways that we can work on these with consulates. I think the very basic level, and we see this again because we work with consulates in New York that have one staff member, and that one staff member is the consul general, and they have to do everything. But they have a lot of individuals that might be eligible for DACA, and they want to work on this. So I think the lowest level interaction that virtually any consulate can do is sort of being an in-the-know partner. Being here today is sort of the first step on that, but really knowing what DACA and DAPA mean, knowing what the injunction means, just understanding it so that when someone asks you a question, and we say the same thing to community partners that are pretty low capacity, saying, being able to say, yes, I know what that program is, being able to send someone to the right place. I think the next step is going to websites like adminrelief.org, taking the resources that have been handed out today. Lots of different organizations, United We Dream, we heard, has phenomenal hotlines. Taking that next step, when you're already in the know, being able to educate someone a little bit, being able to say, yes, I know what that program is, you should read these documents on that program, and you should give this hotline a call, or you should go to this website. And then again, that's pretty low level. You're able to do it with pretty minimal capacity. The next step would sort of be this forming of partnerships, going into action a little bit more. And I think this is a really good piece, and sort of this is a very mutually supportive community. What I want and what our partners at all of the embassies want is the same thing. We want to find people to outreach to, we want to find people to help, we want to find people to serve. And everyone at this table has people that need to be served, that people that are asking them questions. So to be able to come together to form that partnership and be able to, in the end, get what we all want is a really great way to serve people, and again helps you in some of those situations where, because each country sort of has, I think, a little bit of a different interaction on how much you can be doing this work. And that's fine. It can be just sending people to a great partnership, a great partner that you have found. And the last piece would be in the cases where you are permitted to really take action on these. And that can be hosting forums for your nationals, but it can also be hosting clinics. And that's what we really started to do in New York, is to host a lot of clinics where we use the consulates as the hook to bring people in, and then we provide them with a whole wealth of services, and everyone walks out in far better shape. And so those are all the things that we can be doing and we are doing. And I think everyone at this table looks forward to partnering on more events and resource gathering like that.
And if I may, I know that every country has different capacities, but something that it was decided, the president said it publicly in an event in LA, and then our minister has said so, and everybody in our foreign service and our leadership is something very basic. We will not be the obstacle for our nationals to apply for these programs. So in other words, we are not going to put bureaucratic barriers for them to get passports or matriculas. So we, obviously, it depends on the law and regulations of each country. Fortunately, in terms of our regulations, there's also discretion. As for secretarial discretion, there's also, our consuls have some discretion. So we make sure that we are not the obstacle for them to apply. So we do everything we can for our nationals to get their documents. I think that is something very basic, and Julieta mentioned it, and that everybody can do for their nationals.
You can open it up to questions if anyone has any. It's been a long day.
I think I'll add something. On the whole lawsuit, I think it's been really difficult to translate what's already confusing to our community. I think when we started talking about the lawsuit, many of us started saying, oh, it's just a roadblock, it's nothing, it's just a bump on the road. And I think as we really start looking into how bad this is, we start having real conversations on what exactly does this mean for our community, on the likelihood that it's not going to get implemented. Likely it could be this whole year, maybe next year. I think we just need to be very real to our communities about it. I think, yes, we need to stay positive and like tell them, okay, this DACA has worked, but at the same time be honest about what the lawsuit looks like, about it's a long process, it's the courts. Just because I feel like, or at least from our perspective within our field, it's been hard to really tell them, well, you know what, it's not a bump on the road. Actually, it's a pretty crappy wall right now. And so just to be real with your community about it, and not just say, oh, it's just a bump on the road, don't worry, we'll get over it, because it's been hard to then translate it to actually know it's going to be a little longer. But also knowing that, yes, there is tons of experts that have shown and said DACA is within Obama's executive power. It will be implemented, but I think just being very real, and that's how we call it in United We Dream, real talk on what does it really mean. It's going to be a long-term process that we don't want to fight, and we wish it would have been there, but we just need to be honest about it.
So I'll just make a general comment to wrap us up. So a few months ago, my mom pulls me aside and says, hey, Jose, when this DAPA program happens, will you help me prepare my application? And so this is my mother that worked 3 jobs to make sure that someone who was undocumented, such as myself, was able to go to college and was able to go to law school. And the fact that we have people like me and people like our parents who worked so hard to make this happen is indicative of a simple fact. Through our community advocacy and through the work of people like you, we have come farther than we have ever thought possible. Collectively, in this room, we have the ability to literally change the face of this nation because our groups affect millions of people. So I guess my ask to all of you today is to just take at least one thing, because I know it can be overwhelming to hear all of these ideas So my strategy is to pick one thing that I want to really accomplish. And so make that your priority. That makes things easier to accomplish, and at the end of the day, you can look back and say, we took a tangible step. So I would encourage you to swap cards with people here, to discuss strategies. Even if you can't do as much as the Mexican embassy, it doesn't mean that you can't make a significant difference. For people like me, for people like my mother, for people like Julieta, for the people who are not represented in this room. So I guess from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for coming here today, and we are excited to overcome the obstacles moving forward to make sure that we leave a mark on this country that will literally shape the course of our history. So thank you so much, guys.